Hey everyone, so this video is a long one and is the result of several months of work. So I have left timecodes for everything I have discussed in the description below, so if you don't have time to watch the whole thing or are just interested in specific parts, you can skip directly to them. I have also linked the mod in the description below if you guys are interested in playing it for yourself. Also at the end there is a little mini update for my subscribers as well if you guys are interested. It's just about some life changes and how it will affect my videos moving forward. But for everyone else, thanks for checking out my review and I hope you enjoy the video. Doctor Who is one of those special television franchises. It has a rich lore and a long history spanning over half a century. It's a show about exploration and adventure. Every episode can be a different world, a different adventure, and even a different genre of storytelling. Possibilities with this show are limited only by the imagination of the writers. Doctor Who just seems like a perfect concept for a game. The core elements of the show just scream for the gaming treatment. There have been many attempts over the years at making a Doctor Who gaming experience, and I wouldn't say myself that there are any good ones, but there are certainly some games that come close. Unlike other popular science fiction franchises like Star Wars or Star Trek, Doctor Who has never really gotten the AAA gaming treatment. Most Doctor Who titles are often smaller games with smaller budgets, and it does show. But I also think it's because Doctor Who, despite having the perfect concept, out of all the science fiction franchises out there, it is the hardest to execute because of the nature of the show's themes and the ideologies behind its main character. The Doctor at his core is against violence, and the majority of video games do surround the use of violence. While some Doctor Who games have gone down the more arcade shooter route or towards a light-hearted, fun children's game like LEGO Dimensions, we have never really had a more serious attempt at making a fully fleshed out game that captures the essence of the show but also stays true to its main character. The closest we have ever gotten is the adventure games, which I may make a video about at some point. I've been tossing around the idea of doing a review series for Doctor Who based video games for a long while now, and in September of 2017 I put up a Facebook post asking you guys which Doctor Who game you wanted me to review first. The overwhelming couple of responses I got was for Fallout Who Vegas. Now this initially surprised me, but once I started looking into it I quickly realised that there was a lot more to this mod than I initially thought. I think it's safe to say that this mod does more for the Doctor Who gaming scene than what any official licensed Doctor Who game has ever done. As a Doctor Who fan, to truly get everything out of this mod, you will need to spend some time with it. From the early days of learning how to pilot the TARDIS, to becoming a Timelord and burning through 13 regenerations, whether it be weapons, planets, enemies, or even lore, this mod has it all. I honestly can't believe I wasn't aware of this mod sooner. It's incredible that a small team have managed to create a Doctor Who gaming experience unlike any other. This mod itself has gone through so many changes over the years, but with the development moving on to the Fallout 4 version, Fallout Who Vegas is now in its final form. And it is in this form that I firmly believe, without a shadow of a doubt, that it is the best Doctor Who game ever made. So, ladies and gentlemen, I now present to you my review for Fallout Who Vegas. Alright, so before I get on to the mod itself, I feel like I should spend a few moments talking about the main game, New Vegas. I'm gonna be honest, I have never played the Fallout series, so when booting up the game, it was kind of shocking to have my first experience with this world being shot in the head.
The game was rigged from the start.
Now, because I haven't played the other games, I've done a bit of research, so I'm going to do my best here, but if I do get anything wrong regarding Fallout lore or mechanics or whatever, I don't care. So, New Vegas is set in the future of an alternative timeline of Earth in Las Vegas, in case you couldn't already tell from the title. The world has all turned to shit after the events of a nuclear war. The events of New Vegas take place far in the future in the year 2281, with humanity still having to deal with the aftermath of this nuclear war. This game was developed by Obsidian and published by Bethesda, and was released in the US on October 19th, 2010. It is a roleplay shooter where you get to make your own character known as the Courier, and you are thrust into an open world where you take on a series of quests and side missions, shooting various types of mutants and wild animals, and dealing with multiple factions of humanity for which you have to manage your allegiances. This is a very hostile world, and you can get a wide variety of weapons and craft supplies and upgrades for your gear. You also have skill trees with various abilities that you have to level up, and what skills you focus on will depend on how you want to play the game. There is a lot of player freedom here, and that also carries over to the mod as well. So this game has an insane amount of Doctor Who content, so much that I consider Who Vegas to be a game in its own right. At the time of writing this part of the review, I have been playing it for about 24 hours, and I still haven't seen or tried everything there is to do. The game is just so expansive. The small team behind the mod known as the Foundry have put so much time and effort into creating an experience that is so rich and detailed. This mod isn't just a TARDIS simulator, it has so much extra stuff. Like I said before, there are a heap of story quests. There is a whole list of Doctor Who specific weapons and gadgets to craft. There are spontaneous alien invasions that happen every 24 hours, iconic enemies to defeat. The TARDIS itself is so expansive with many different rooms. Some serve some specific purposes and others are just there for a bit of fun. I know a lot of the game systems already existed in Obsidian's base game, but this mod adds a few extra systems that aren't in the base game, and that's the thing. This mod doesn't just feature skins and items to mess around with. It incorporates new in-game systems to create something new and interesting. So let's break it down and take a closer look at how Fallout New Vegas plays. I have thought long and hard about how I wanted to structure this review, and I have come to the conclusion that the easiest way to do that is to break my experience down into segments. The initial segment of the game for me was the first 8 to 10 hours. When I said earlier in the video that as a Doctor Who fan, to get the most out of this game you will need to spend some time with it, I wasn't joking. During your first few hours, not only do you need to level up your character, but you also have to level up various skill sets in the TARDIS to unlock advanced mode and the ability to become a Timelord. And even then, once you've unlocked advanced mode, you will need to spend some time reading the manual and learning the TARDIS systems. At this point in the game, you do have access to the first Who Vegas story quest, but it's in your best interest to leave it and focus on leveling up, progression, and crafting. So let's go through the first 10 hours or so in a little bit more detail, starting with the old girl herself, the TARDIS. The TARDIS is where you will spend the bulk of your Who Vegas journey. When you first find the TARDIS at Gibson's scrapyard, it's a little bit battered and damaged, but that doesn't change the feeling you get when you first enter and are greeted with the interior of the 11th Doctor's TARDIS. When you first start, you only have the option of flying the TARDIS in basic mode, which means you only just have access to random flight mode and the basic TARDIS systems. Most of the controls manage to match up to their show counterparts. Once the TARDIS is in flight, you can leave it on autopilot, but instead of sitting on your ass, you should press this button here, the blue boring stabilizers. This deactivates the autopilot, and then you are required to activate certain controls in periodic intervals to allow the TARDIS to traverse time and space with ease. To unlock advanced mode, you need to level up the piloting skill level to level 5. To do this, two things need to be done. First, every flight needs to be done with autopilot turned off, and also the hostile action displacement system needs to be deactivated. HADS is a security system that stops alien spacecrafts from attacking the TARDIS while in flight. Turning both of these things off allows you to level up your piloting level quicker, and it doesn't take too long. From memory, it took me about 15 to 20 minutes of just randomly flying around. Once you unlock advanced mode, that's when the real game begins. This is where the game becomes a proper TARDIS simulator. Now, at this point in the review, I'm going to take some time to break down the TARDIS advanced mode, as there is a lot to talk about. Once you activate advanced mode, you get access to a whole load of subsystems and protocols, and these are all required to make certain functions of the TARDIS work. If you want to learn the systems, you really have to spend some time referring to the TARDIS manual. Get used to looking at these screens because you will spend at least half of your game time reading these. In advanced mode, you also have to manage your TARDIS power level. Each system requires a certain amount of power, and the TARDIS only has a limited amount of power to play with. This requires some TARDIS system management. You need to prioritize the systems that you need in the moment. When it comes down to the system management, a lot of the TARDIS subsystems need to be activated to allow the main essential systems that control basic things like flight and defense to work. All of these systems require constant balancing, toggling them on and off depending on what systems and protocols you want activated. You don't initially have the TARDIS protocols in the databank, so you have to go and find them. They can be found by searching the library for the missing pages of the TARDIS manual. The protocols can be activated in certain situations. For example, the main ones I found using myself were the refuel and repair protocols. The TARDIS runs on Artron energy, and you are required to refuel every now and then, otherwise this can happen. In basic mode, to both fuel and repair the TARDIS, all you have to do is just push the lever and leave the TARDIS. However, in advanced mode, you need to activate the correct subsystems, then activate the repair or refuel protocol. Then once that is loaded, you then go and press the lever. In advanced mode, you are also required to craft and replace TARDIS components that are damaged. It does take a bit of time to learn and understand the TARDIS systems. There are also a heap of events that can happen when flying the TARDIS, such as temporal fissures that open up randomly with weeping angels wandering around the TARDIS, or the regular mercury fuel leak that kept happening to me for some reason, where the TARDIS fills up with poisonous gas. And one time the TARDIS dematerialized inside itself. But before we move on from the TARDIS, I do want to briefly talk about space battles. These randomly happen during flight when HADS is turned off. You can encounter enemy ships like Dalek saucers and cyber warships, and it's basically a turn-based combat scenario where both the TARDIS and the enemy ship have health and shields, and you take turns to attack and defend, that kind of thing. And once you destroy the ship, you get the option to scan for resources or probe the data core. The good thing about the TARDIS though is if you want to play the game as a fully fleshed out TARDIS simulator, you can. But if you are someone who is just interested in the game's storyline, you do have the option of leaving it on basic mode. But to get the most out of this experience, advanced mode should be turned on. But I have already talked about the TARDIS systems enough that you're probably sick of hearing about them by now. And the truth is, if I sat here and went through everything, we would be here all day, and this review is going on for long enough as it is. So before we move on to the quest storyline, I want to quickly talk about what else you should do in the early hours of the game. Now, apart from learning the TARDIS systems, the other part of your Who Vegas journey that will take up a bit of time is the progression system. Let me explain. Inside the TARDIS, there are two specific rooms that are vital to player progression. These two rooms are the workshop and the bio lab. Both of these rooms help level up your character biochemistry and temporal engineering levels. This is no easy task, however, as it does involve some grinding, especially the bio lab. It took me several hours of doing the same thing over and over again to level up my character. Now, I know what you're thinking. Why would I spend my time grinding these skills, crafting items for the sake of crafting, when all I want to do is fly my TARDIS around and shoot Daleks? Well, the simple answer is, do you want to become a Time Lord? Leveling up these skills allow you to do what, in my view, is the greatest addition to this game. The ability to regenerate upon death, like a Time Lord. Now, getting to that point is, like I said, a bit of a grind, and it's not a fun one. I personally think crafting in any game is a boring and tedious procedure, and here it is no different, but the end result of a couple of hours of hard work is 100% worth your time. So let's break these systems down. The first skill I focused on was my Temporal engineering skill. Now, the workshop allows you to craft many different items, from the sonic screwdriver, laser screwdriver. You can craft components for the TARDIS, as well as your own K9. Crafting itself is a fairly easy process. First, you have to refine minerals at the first station. Now, this is made super easy as you can just refine them and they magically appear out of nowhere in this little box to collect. This saves a lot of time as you don't actually need to go out of your way to collect minerals and materials like you need to for the Fallout New Vegas crafting system. The higher temporal engineering level you are, the easier and quicker it is to refine these minerals. All the minerals have actually been mentioned in the show at some point, such as Dalekanium or Beryllium. Once these are refined and you have enough of them, you can use them to craft materials. Then, once you have enough materials, you can use those to craft the items you need. Even though it sounds like a lot to do, it doesn't actually take that long to craft something. I made sure early on in the game that I crafted a laser screwdriver, which took me about 10 minutes to do, but it was such a smart decision. The thing is so ridiculously overpowered. I never really used any of the other weapons because I never really felt the need to. I also crafted a sonic screwdriver as well, purely for the sake of having one. While both different screwdrivers have different functions, some of the more basic functions, such as unlocking doors for example, are available on both. So I didn't end up using the sonic as much as I would have liked, but it was nice being able to change the skin of the Sonic to various skins throughout the show's history. It doesn't take a lot of crafting to level up. I think from memory it took me about 40 minutes or so, and once you're done, a fob watch can be crafted, which is an essential component to becoming a Time Lord. Once that is down, it is on to the lab to upgrade that biochemistry. In the lab, you have to break items down to create base protein, alkali, and acids. This one is really grindy because unlike the workshop, you actually have to go and gather the items to break down. However, not everything can be broken down, so you might have several times where you go to do an extraction and get nothing out of it. Once you have enough of these base items, you can use them to craft things like regenerative stabilizers, which do come in handy later on. Once you have enough supplies and you have crafted a fob watch in the workshop, it's time to craft a symbiotic nuclei, which is essentially Time Lord DNA. Once taken, your body changes and your DNA mutates. This is shown through the regeneration effect in the game. Once this process is completed, after all this grinding, you finally become a Time Lord. When you become a Time Lord, you will gain the ability to regenerate upon death. You can regenerate straight away, hold it off for 15 minutes, end of time style, or you can just accept fate and not waste a regeneration and load a save. Holding it off is usually the best option as it gives you sufficient time to get back to the TARDIS. Regenerating outside the TARDIS can have serious consequences such as temporary blindness or insanity. Post-regeneration you can go to the Zero Room, which does help combat these systems of post-regeneration stress. So far in my time playing the game, I have gone through 4 regenerations, and at the time of writing this, I am currently on my 5th. I'll go through my various incarnations when I talk about the campaign. This whole ability is fun for those who like roleplay, as you can change your clothes with each incarnation, giving them a unique style, but it also resets and randomizes your stats, so every incarnation is different, and for that extra immersion you can also play each incarnation differently. When you become a Time Lord, you can gain various mental abilities, which, like with the TARDIS protocols, can be found in Encyclopedia Gallifrey's. I think that's what they're called. These little bottles can only be opened by Time Lords and contain various little facts and lore of the Time Lords, which are an interesting read. By this point in the game, I was leveled up enough and had crafted enough equipment to move into the game's questline. So now for the next segment of this review, I am going to go through the story missions. So if you don't want spoilers, then I suggest skipping to this segment of the video, but for those of you who don't care, let's go in depth on the story of Who Vegas. I know I have been rambling on about this game for 18 minutes now, and you're probably sick of hearing me talk about the TARDIS and crafting and all that stuff. But talking about all that stuff first is necessary to understanding the way the game works. As I said earlier, you can't just rush into the campaign. You need to take your time with it, level up, and get yourself to a point where you can comfortably take on the missions. I'm not saying they are hard, not at all in fact, but the game's campaign is designed in such a way that you need to be familiar with everything I have talked about for the past 10 minutes. So for those of you who are still here, I appreciate your patience, but it is now time to get into the meat of the game. This segment of the video will be a little different, as rather than just talk about it and offer a critique, I'm actually going to recount my adventures, how they happened, because I understand that not everyone watching this will actually be able to experience this for themselves. This will probably be the longest segment of the video, as there is a lot to get through. So let's rewind a bit, right back to the beginning. The game starts the same way Fallout New Vegas starts. You get shot, customize your character, pick your stats and perks, etc, etc. But things deviate from the vanilla game as soon as you venture out into the town of Goodspring. In the normal game, you would go on your merry way and start your adventure, but in Who Vegas, the TARDIS appears behind you and a figure in a spacesuit walks out. That person is you. You explain that you have to come back in time to give yourself a key to the TARDIS. While you don't see your future self as they are in the spacesuit, you do take note that their voice sounds different. Your future self explains that there is no time to go into the concept of regeneration and basically gives you the key and leaves. And after that brief first encounter, your Fallout Who Vegas journey begins. You then trek through the land of New Vegas, trying to avoid any wild animals or monsters as you are severely under-equipped to deal with them at this time. Wander around long enough and you'll eventually arrive at Gibson's scrapyard, where you find the TARDIS. It looks a bit battered and damaged, but when you enter, you are greeted by the TARDIS interface. You go through the tutorial quest, fix the TARDIS, and then play about 10 hours or so before you go on to your first proper story quest. Now, technically the first story quest is the Christmas special. However, for some reason I played Emergency on Skaro first, so I'm going to talk about that one now. You arrive on Skaro after receiving an emergency transmission. The planet is filled with radiation that will slowly kill you over time, so you can't last too long on the surface without getting radiation poisoning. To combat this, you will need to take some radiation pills crafted in the TARDIS biolab. Now, I didn't know about this when I played it, so I kept having to run back to the TARDIS and heal myself in the sickbay. After wandering the forests a bit, you eventually find a crashed ship where the signal has come from. After talking to the pilot inside, you find that the ship has jettisoned power cells all over Skaro, and you need to go and retrieve them to power up the ship. But before you can do anything, a squad of Daleks turned up. Daleks can be easily defeated with a laser screwdriver, but any of the other weapons from the main game are really useless against them. The cells themselves are pretty easy to find and pick up. You just have to avoid or take out Dalek patrols, and there is one at a swamp where you need to take out these mutant plant creature things. The last cell is in the Dalek stronghold, and there are a lot of Daleks in this area, and I died a couple of times trying to do this, as I wasn't quite prepared to lose a regeneration on this first mission. Inside the Dalek facility, there is a crack in the wall similar to the ones in Series 5. You hear a message from the other side and the crack fades. These cracks actually keep appearing throughout the campaign with little messages. Go and take the last power cell, and there's also a security panel to activate which unlocks a door to a place called the Asylum, which I'll get into a little bit later. The Daleks make one last attempt at stopping you and bring out the big guns with the special weapons Trans Daleks, whose bolts explode on impact, killing you instantly. Once you get past all them, you return the power cells to the ship, and the ship leaves, leaving you a schematic for a Dalek weapon. It was a pretty simple first mission. I loved the design of Skaro from the forests and craters and swamps. It was a little challenging having to face so many Daleks at once, which is something I wasn't used to doing at the time. Next, I was on to the Christmas special. You get an invitation to visit Yule World, and is essentially an introduction to the various enemies that you'll encounter during your time playing the game. There are Daleks, Cybermen, Weeping Angels, Autons, and also the Silence. When you arrive, you are thrown from the TARDIS and are trapped in a circular forest with the TARDIS at the centre. There is a letter from Father Christmas apparently, and he has invited some guests to join you, and has left Christmas presents around the forest with items to deal with these guests. This is basically set up as some twisted game, and you need to take on waves of enemies before you are allowed to leave. Unfortunately, this was also the end of the line for my first incarnation, as I died so many times during this mission due to my refusal to regenerate that I just got sick of it, so I just let it happen. As a result, at the end of this mission, I went through my first regeneration. So the first wave of enemies is the Auton. You can find the anti-plastic needed to destroy them in one of the presents, but I didn't bother using it as I just found it easier to use my laser screwdriver. Up next were the Silence. There are only a few of these guys, but at the start of the mission you are given an eye drive, which allows you to see the Silence. Without it, you can't see them and they just kill you. They are easily defeated with the laser or any weapon for that matter. However, keep your distance as the lightning powers do quite a bit of damage. The next wave is the Weeping Angels, and these are in my opinion the toughest enemies. You can't kill them or damage them. This is where the most of my deaths from this mission came from, as they are instant death. I saved my game after starting the regeneration process so I wouldn't have to keep replaying the first couple of waves, and just took my time with the angels. There are only 3 angels to deal with. It's just a matter of getting them before they get you. The only way they can be defeated is by using these devices which send them back in time. The final 2 waves are the Cybermen and Daleks, which are fairly straightforward to defeat. Once all the waves are completed, you can deactivate the shield pad and return to the TARDIS. This is where I had to say goodbye to my first incarnation. The version of my character that I had spent over 12 hours with had finally met her end. I launched the TARDIS into one final emotional moment and regenerated into my second incarnation. Lara number 2, yes, my character's name is Lara after Lara Croft. Anyway, Lara number 2 was a little bit older and had grey hair. I decided she was a bit more of a mature scientist than the rebel without a cause like my first incarnation, which can be reflected in her clothing and change of TARDIS design. With a new body, I decided not to move on to the next quest straight away. I fucked around for a bit, found a Silence ship and killed all of the Silence in it, even built my own K9, but then it was on to the story quest, and this one is actually my favourite of them all, Haunted Hunted. So, after having to push K9 out of the door for some reason, I arrived at the Motel Los Angeles, which is haunted by Weeping Angels. So anyway, you wander around the dark hallways for a bit when an angel would pop up briefly in a scripted jump scare moment. Eventually you hear a phone ring. There is a brief little puzzle here as you need to find out a way to get to the phone as the direct path has collapsed. It isn't too hard and takes about 30 seconds to do. There is also another crack here as well. At this point, no Weeping Angels have appeared outside of the scripted moments. There is this bit where you walk into a small storage room and the door closes behind you, but apart from that, nothing much happens. Eventually you find the phone and answer it. A voice over the phone tells you that the angels are there and not to look away or blink. They also mention that they remember this, indicating that the person on the phone you are talking to is your future self. An angel then appears behind you, and there are also another couple of angels throughout the hotel, so then now you have to make it back to the TARDIS. There are a couple of ways to go about this. You can keep eye contact with the angels and use the various rooms to lure them, closing the door and allowing yourself a few moments to get ahead of them. Or if you have your little time bomb, you can send them back in time and problem solved. But if they catch you, in this mission they don't actually kill you. Instead, they send you 230 years into the past, where you are then forced to live out the rest of your life until the day the TARDIS lands, so you can then leave. Doing this, however, will use up a regeneration as you die of old age. This is what ended up happening to me, except on my first attempt at this mission. I tried to escape the angels in the past, but they just killed me. If you are forced to stay there, the TARDIS materializes in the hallway with all your personal belongings in a bag. The TARDIS then detects a paradox and explodes, leaving you with a tricky situation to deal with. It doesn't matter how this mission plays out, it always ends with you in the TARDIS calling your former self to warn them about the angels. I really enjoyed this mission, as it played a little with the horror aspects with the level design. Also, while this mission is heavily scripted like previous missions, there are multiple ways to complete it, and I like that. My third incarnation I will call the ugly incarnation. Believe it or not, this is meant to be a girl character. Because of the way my incarnation looks, I decided she would have no sense of fashion, like the Sixth Doctor. You land the TARDIS on the moon to investigate a transmission coming from the surface. You wander around for a little bit before finding the entrance to a base. Have you noticed that every mission involves just wandering around for a bit? Anyway, once inside, there is no power, so you have to navigate through what seems to be like a maze of corridors until you find a switchboard. There is also another crack here, which, if you couldn't tell already, the messages coming from the other side are from the Timelords. Once the power is back up, you need to get the key for the control room, which you can find in a bedroom with the remains of one of the station's inhabitants. There is a computer terminal with some background information for those who are interested, and we move on to opening the control room, which is the source of the transmission. Inside, you disable the transmission, but also get the space-time coordinates for the planet Telos. Once disabled, you make your way back to the TARDIS when a Cyberman comes out of nowhere and starts to chase you around the base. This Cyberman is a lot more tougher than the regular ones you encounter in the game. The easiest way to take it down is to keep your distance and lure it towards the control boxes, giving it an electric shock. Do this enough times and the Cybermen will collapse to the ground. However, you're not out of trouble yet, as the Cybermen are now all over the surface. This is where my footage corrupted a little bit, so apologies for that. Unfortunately, this is the part of the mission where Lara number 3 met her end. I decided I was just going to try and avoid all the Cybermen and try to get to the TARDIS as quickly as possible, but I got forced into a combat situation and lost too much health. Once I got back to the TARDIS, I regenerated, and Lara number 4 looked a lot more like a man than what 3 did. So, since Time Lords can change gender, I decided for roleplay purposes I would change the gender of my character in the command menu. So now my fourth incarnation was a man. I decided to make this incarnation a mix of both the 10th and the 11th Doctor's personalities, and this incarnation was actually the second longest living one to my original. Well, I guess technically Lara 2 lasted the longest because she had to live 200 years in a hotel room. After many adventures messing around, which included one on Telos and also running out of fuel a couple of times, I decided to embark on the next quest, the detective. You arrive at Greystone Hall. A butler approaches you as you exit the TARDIS. He mistakes you for a detective from Scotland Yard and then shows you a body of a murder victim. After examination, you learn that the victim was hit with an energy projectile, which means someone in this hall is the murderer, and you have to find out who it is by asking the suspects where they were and what they were doing at the time of the murder. You have to be quick though, as bodies continue to drop in various rooms throughout the hall. You can accuse anyone of being the murderer, but if you are wrong, the real culprit gets away and you fail the mission. However, if you guess correctly, it is revealed that they are an Auton and they attack you and run to the roof. After inspecting their room, you uncover the plans to build a transmitter on the roof of the building. Like with the Cybermen in the previous mission, this Auton is tougher than the others and you have to use the anti-plastic to take it out. After destroying the duplicate, you try to activate the transmitter to find answers, but it doesn't work, and you are left to ponder what the next in consciousness plan is next. This mission is a little different to the previous ones, as it involves some real detective work, interviewing everyone and narrowing down the list of suspects based on the evidence. It could have been a little more in depth than what it was, but this is a mod, so there could have been some limitations in the design. Still, it was a nice break from the norm, and I also like how the butler had a voice as well, rather than just being a text box.
Heaven knows what you're saying, man. Its hand. Did you see its hand?
Up next was the S.S Cirius mission. This mission is only a really short one with no real danger. This is designed to introduce you to the concept of companions. You arrive on the ship and you are given a simple task: find out what's going on. There is a door you can't open because you need a companion to open it for you for some reason, and you guessed it, you wander around for a bit until you find yourself on the bridge of the ship where the crew are. The captain responds the only way any normal person would, asking who you are and how you got on the ship. I also love how my male incarnation still refers to himself as Lara. So the basic story here is they recovered some archaeological artifacts and the ship's AI has become obsessed with them and has decided for some reason to pilot the ship into a star. So it's up to you, Larry, and a crew member of your choice to reset the ship's CPU. There is no time for fucking about here, as this is a timed mission. So you go and chat to one of the crew members and they become your companion. You can check their stats and you need to find someone who has a high lock-picking skill. So I picked Chloe. I can't remember her name, but she has blue hair, so Chloe will do. So you head down to the door and get your companion to open it. I politely asked Chloe, sorry, Emma. Well, I'm committed to Chloe now, so that is your name from now on. So Chloe opened the door for me and we headed downstairs to the AI core. Chloe is so skilled, in fact, that she even hacked the terminal and opened the bulkhead for me. It's here we meet Weller, the AI, who has decided to speak all Shakespearean. I tried to convince it to change the course, but it wouldn't budge, so I had to manually go and disengage the drive systems. Then Chloe and I went straight back to the TARDIS, didn't say goodbye to anyone, and the mission was done. Upon entering the TARDIS, Chloe reacts the same way any good companion would ever react. And then she decided for some reason that she wanted to visit Bitter Springs. So I took her there. Most of the missions so far have been short, easy little adventures, and each felt different and unique, which was nice. However, as we move towards the finale of the Who Vegas journey, the game becomes grindy once again. So once you have completed all the previous story quests, you need to head down to the gallery to find a torn painting and a crack in the wall. Rather than the crack just being a message like the rest of the game, this time the Time Lords wish to communicate with you. They inform you that Gallifrey is lost in a pocket universe and they need your help to recover 6 fragments of the gateway, the connection between our universe and theirs. And so begins the quest Unto the Past. This is where you also unlock spaceflight for the TARDIS. I told you earlier we would eventually get to this. There are 6 different galaxies added to the nav computer, and each of them have a fragment to find. The grind then returns to the game once again, and the sole objective of this quest is to find the fragments. You can complete this in any order, and once you are done you can complete the painting on the wall and move on to the final quest. As this video has already gone on for over 35 minutes now, I'm going to keep this segment brief. So, let's talk about spaceflight quickly. While when you first encounter spaceflight in the game it may seem complicated, or at least it was to me anyway, it is actually a really simple, straightforward concept. You select the galaxy you want to travel to in the Navcom computer, and then follow the standard procedure to launch the TARDIS. Once the TARDIS lands, it enters what's called drift mode, where it slowly drifts between coordinates. The galaxy coordinates are on an X and Y axis and split up into segments of 10 by 10. This part of the game is very boring, and there is no real clear indication on where anything is located, so you spend a lot of the time just aimlessly wandering around scanning the universe hoping to find a location for a fragment. Traveling through the universe uses fuel as well, which means some really long waiting times if you want to maximize your fuel. As for the fragments, they can be found at each location indicated by the quest objectives, except for the one that can be found during a space battle with the Dalek Squadron. These locations don't get added into your nav computer until you have found them and are flying around in orbit. To make this whole process easier, you can actually buy the space coordinates from the Hypertrader. Here you can trade and buy various weapons, gadgets, TARDIS components, etc, etc. Also, one of the fragments for the painting is here as well. with one fragment already collected from the Daleks and another collected from the Hyper Trader, we have 4 more to collect. Before I could get to any of this, however, I had to stop an Auton invasion which unfortunately saw the end of my 4th incarnation. After defeating the Nestine consciousness, I headed back to the TARDIS to regenerate. Again, for roleplay purposes, I decided to regenerate back into a female character. This was the first regeneration where I had a companion present, and her reaction wasn't what I was hoping for. Due to me changing, Chloe decided she wanted to go back to the ship. So I dropped her off, said goodbye, and continued on my quest to find the fragments. The Sisterhood of Khan have the next piece and are willing to give it to us as long as we take down the Beast of Khan in the junkyard. While the Beast of Khan is pretty easy to defeat, he does have a lot of health, so, like with the Cybermen earlier, you just have to keep your distance and slowly chip away at his health bar. To get the fragment in Cyber Station 0, you need to free Croton, who is a partially converted Timelord who has been imprisoned by the Cybermen. The Cyber Station is quite massive, so you get a little freedom to explore around, and there are plenty of Cybermen to take out along the way. Once you have the fragment, Croton joins you and becomes your companion. I also picked up this girl at some point from the casino as well, so now I have 2 companions. The final 2 fragments can be found on Zeta and Spiridon, and both of these are really easy to collect. Zeta is a large swampland that is covered in aliens to kill, and there is a complex which can be accessed once a big giant plant monster is defeated. This boss, if you would call it that, is set up to be super hard to defeat. However, I shot him a couple of times with my laser screwdriver, and that was that. Spiridon is a jungle planet that is filled with Daleks. The fragment can be found by looting the Daleks that you kill. After grabbing the fragment, you head back to the TARDIS to discover that its doors have been sealed shut with fungus. To get rid of it, you need to collect 5 samples of plant alkali from the little attack plants that are around the map. Once the fungus is cleared off the doors, it's time to take the fragments down to the gallery for the final quest. Once the painting is reassembled, you step through it and end up in the Death Zone on Gallifrey. Classic Doctor Who fans will recognise this from the episode The 5 Doctors. You need to get to the Dark Tower, which is home to the Tomb of Rassilon, and like with every mission preceding this one, you wander around for a bit when you discover the remains of an old Cyberman. You find out that the Cyberman was killed by a Rastan warrior robot, another thing fans of The 5 Doctors will recognise. The notice tells you to be on your guard, however, I never encountered one on my way to the tower, which was a bit of a shame. Once you make it to the Dark Tower, you are faced with a checkered board which you cannot cross directly. So you walk around the side of it, and you then enter the Tomb of Rassilon. An older, damaged version of your TARDIS is sitting there, as well as a Time Lord called the Overseer, who gives you a TARDIS control disc. In fact, the same control disc that your future incarnation gave you back at the start of the game. You then have to take that control disc back in time and give it to your former self, so then your former self can have their adventures leading them all the way back here. Your TARDIS then arrives and you put on the spacesuit that you saw yourself wearing at the beginning of the game, and as you enter the TARDIS it takes off automatically. When the TARDIS lands on Earth, you walk out and a message appears stating that you've handed over the control disc to your former self. Once that is done, the TARDIS takes you back to Gallifrey, where the Overseer informs you that the timelines have been restored or something, and with that the credits roll and your Fallout New Vegas journey is complete. Well, the questline anyway. That's a good thing about RPGs, is you can just keep playing for as long as you want to. The thing I liked most about the campaign was the variety in the missions, and while a lot of missions had similar elements, it was this variety that made them interesting to play. The campaign did lose my interest a little bit towards the end with the space flight, and the final mission, even though it had a lot of fan service, especially for those classic fans like myself, I personally found it very underwhelming. But the quality of each quest in both structure and design is something that surprised me, is more than enough to make up for all the grinding I had to do beforehand and the shortcomings towards the end. Now, even though the main questline is complete, there is still more content in the game to explore. During your time in spaceflight, you can come across Trenzalore, and finding it starts up a new quest. Trenzalore is basically a small battlefield where every 24 hours in-game, variations of enemies arrive to battle it out. All the enemy types from the game are here, excluding the Weeping Angels. Trenzalore also introduces us to the Silurians as well, and we also get a new quest from that. The Silurian quest is literally just look at the TARDIS databanks for some information on them, and then do some research in the library. There is no mission for the Silurians, which is disappointing, and once completed you unlock a schematic for an upgrade to their weapons. The objective is to protect the people of Trenzalore by taking out each wave. It is an absolute shit show of laser fire, and with so many enemies it can be easy death. The siege of Trenzalore is never ending, however after you defeat a few waves, a message appears telling you of the moment. The Omega Arsenal on Gallifrey becomes available, and you can use the moment to stop the siege, but in the process you will destroy Trenzalore, killing billions of innocent people. This is optional, but if you choose to do it, you can't access Trenzalore anymore, and it also costs you a regeneration. I chose to use the moment for the purposes of this review, which caused me to regenerate once again. There is more to see at Trenzalore, however, as you can venture down into the catacombs and explore. It's a maze of tunnels with a few dead ends, but you can discover both the Doctor's tomb and a silenced ship down there. The Silence basically tell you that Silence will fall, and there is an optional battle there. Also, you can access the Doctor's tomb, but you cannot interact with its temporal fissure. As well as this, there are also alien invasions on Earth every 24 hours. So far, the only invasions I have encountered were the Daleks or Autons. An invasion involves taking out the opposite forces from the town, and then heading to their stronghold and destroying it. The Auton stronghold is basically a factory where you destroy the Nestine consciousness, but the Dalek one is my favourite, as you get to explore a Dalek ship and then blow it up, which is a lot of fun. In terms of the smaller things, there are plenty of Easter eggs to find throughout the game world, such as the Bad Wolf graffiti on the walls on some buildings. There are also hypercubes to find which contain outfits for all the Doctors. In the wardrobe, there is a suitcase which also contains clothes of several companions. Also, in the TARDIS galley, you can find a key by the fireplace which unlocks a wardrobe in the wardrobe, which is actually the Master's TARDIS. There is a hypercube to collect, and once collected, his TARDIS implodes. But in conclusion, there is just so much content here, and in my view, it's one of the most, if not the most, comprehensive Doctor Who gaming experience out there. The simple truth is that there is no other Doctor Who game out there that is as rich in content and made by a dedicated team who has a massive passion for the show. This passion and dedication comes through in every aspect of the game's design. If you're a Whovian and play games on PC and you haven't played this for yourself, I recommend doing so, as I believe you are doing yourself a disservice by not playing it. You can buy New Vegas for pretty cheap on Steam, and the mod can be downloaded and installed pretty easily and quickly, and it doesn't require the best specs to run. I'm not going to give it a rating, as that is not really my thing. I believe that review scores are irrelevant, and that the value from a review should come from the content of the review itself. As you can tell by the length of this video, I love and recommend this mod. It is a little buggy at times, but overall it's a decent experience, and up until I played this, I didn't think there were any Doctor Who games that existed that really captured the spirit of the show. So all that is left to say now is thank you to the Foundry for your commitment to making an incredible Doctor Who gaming experience, and I look forward to seeing the future of Fallout Who. Thank you guys so much for watching the video and making it to the very end. If you enjoyed this video and like what I do here, then consider leaving a like and also subscribing for more content. These videos take a lot of time to put together, so I appreciate all of your support, and I just want to say a big huge thank you for all the comments you guys have left on my previous videos, and a big huge thank you for the love the Gmod TARDIS video has gotten. We are over 12,000 views now, which is insane. So to all my subscribers, here's just a quick little update for you. I'm going to be off to uni soon to study filmmaking, so I have no idea what my schedule is going to be during my study periods in regards to that. But I will be focused on producing more content as regular as I can moving forward. But other than that, I plan on making more Doctor Who game reviews, as well as I'm planning some videos focused on Tomb Raider and Life is Strange, among other things. I have so many ideas of videos I want to make and things I want to do, so hopefully I get the time throughout the year to do them. But anyway, as always, thanks for watching this. I appreciate it. Bye bye.